What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Optimize You. We are helping you optimize every single area of your life: health, fitness, nutrition, mindset, identity, literally everything, every Tuesday and Thursday. And today, what we are going to be talking about is sustainable versus unsustainable fat loss approaches. So Matt and myself, we both believe in sustainable fat loss approaches, which is not sexy in the eyes of most people. But we'll talk about things like Ozempic, gastric bypass, fad diets, all of the stuff that a lot of people are doing that is a quick fix out there, why they're bad, why you end up gaining the weight back. And we're going to give you some tips on how you can find the best sustainable approach for you. And always, as always, if you enjoy this podcast, if you love listening and watching to this on a regular basis, first off, we fucking greatly appreciate you. And secondly, we'd appreciate you if you would give us a rating on Apple, on Spotify, or if you just to pick one person from your life, friend, family member, somebody who you think could benefit from each of our podcasts we do on a weekly basis, and to share that with them. We appreciate you, and let's get into it. Matt, what is going on, brother?
What's up, my man? This is a cool one. This is a popular topic, and this is something that we deal with very frequently. It's all over the place. You're going to see it. You can just scroll through social media. It doesn't matter what platform you're on. You're going to see something about the quick fix, the thing that looks sexy, the thing that's like, oh, I want to do that here now. Or maybe your friend did it, or maybe you got a family member that's has done it or is currently doing it. And so I'm excited to dive into this one, man. We got a lot to unfold here and share our opinions, share our experiences. And then at the end, the best part about it is to let people make their own decisions.
Yeah, exactly, man. And that's something we've always talked about is like sustainability. That's what NCI, who we've both been educated by, taking some of their certifications and taking some of their business coaching, they all preach sustainable approach, which is not something you see out there very much, right? It's like, honestly, it's frustrating. And I feel so bad for these people who end up doing these quick fixes, these unsustainable approaches. And we were talking about it right before here. It really is. A lot of the people that we end up working with are people who have just tried all of these different things and they haven't worked for them. They continue gaining the weight back. And so if you're somebody out there and you're in these different quick fixes, you've tried, keto, you've tried intermittent fasting, you've tried Noom or whatever all these other things are out there, right? There's a million different things. People are doing Ozempic. People are doing other type of diabetes medications that suppress your appetite. Gastric bypass, you see that's a very popular thing out there, which can be beneficial for some people, but you see so many people that end up gaining the weight back. And really, first off, I think a lot of this comes down to like these approaches. You're not changing the behaviors, right? It's not changing your habits. With say Ozempic, right? People are seeing extreme weight loss because they're not hungry throughout the day, right? They're literally suppressing their appetite. They're probably eating 800, 900 calories. Obviously, you're going to lose fucking weight, but you didn't do it in a way that changed your habits, that improved your sleep, that improved your eating habits, that got you walking, moving, working out more, that got you managing your stress in a better way. And when you don't do that, you set yourself up for failure, because when you stop taking the medication or you stop doing the thing you've been doing that's the reason why you're losing the weight, then you basically put yourself in the situation of the lottery winners who they were maybe poor, right? And then they won $500 million. Well, guess what? You never built that wealth, right? So you don't have the habits of a person that has $500 million. How are you going to keep that, right? You're basically, you have the habits of somebody who is making no money, and now you have all this money, and so you end up losing it all. Same thing with health, fitness, fat loss, all this shit.
Man, I didn't think about it like that. That's a great way to put it. That's exactly what it is. It's the lottery winners, right? It's like they didn't develop the skills and the habits to be able to achieve that successfully on their own, right? It was just handed to them, very much so like the quick fixes that you just mentioned right now. And you got to ask yourself, if you are somebody who's going through that kind of thing, meaning you constantly feel yourself jumping from one thing to the next. And the reason you are in that cycle is because it's not that it doesn't work. Like to Alex's point, like you go on Ozempic, it's because you're literally losing your appetite and you're consuming a ton of less calories than what you normally would. So of course you're going to get the results. So the scale moves. It looks great. It's very surface level. It's awesome eye candy. But since you didn't develop the habits to be able to achieve that, and you are now relying on this thing, this quick Band-Aid fix, right? I call it a Band-Aid on a deep cut that needs stitches. A lot of people, the thing that looks sexy, right? You're going to need it. There's a deeper issue lying there that doesn't get brought to the surface level until you actually go through it, do the thing, fall on your face, and then ask yourself, well, shit, what do I do now? And until you do that X amount of times, usually, you know, every individual is different. And I know I've talked to my clients personally. Some clients have tried everything out there, everything under the sun. Some people have tried one or two things. Some people are brand new. So it just depends. But I would say for the majority, generally speaking, you could count at least on one hand how many different diets that my current clients have tried before they've come to me. And so they know that in a quick 5-minute conversation, they can tell really quick what I'm about and what I'm not about. And that really just comes down to, I can condense everything into a nutshell and just, you know, give you the Cliff Notes version here. But, you know, if you can't do something for 10 years, why bother doing it for 10 days? That's always my approach with it. Of course, there's going to be different stages. There's going to be different progressions. And every individual scenario is going to be case by case. But you got to ask yourself, if you're going to rely on these shots, if you're going to rely on these water detoxes, if you're going to just rely on some quick bullshit, how long are you going to do that for? These shake and these bar diets too. Are you just going to eat shakes and bars for the rest of your life? I think people don't or fail to see beyond the end result. It's like when you get to that result, when you get to that arbitrary body weight number, when you get to that body that you've wanted to achieve, you got to remember, to Alex's point with the lottery, it's like, if you get all that money, if you found a way to develop habits and be able to sustain and keep that money, or learn how to invest it so that you can have that money constantly growing for you, like those are skills that are developed that are necessary to be able to acquire and sustain and keep and hold your money, or have it grow, right? So meaning you can continue on beyond that initial, here's the $1 million, right? It's the same thing with weight loss. Like you can get the weight off really quick, but if you didn't develop the habits to go beyond that goal body weight, beyond that figure that you're trying to develop, and you haven't found the actual tangible skills, the X's and O's, the habits, the things that are required to keep what you have just got, how long are you going to hold on to it for? You know, that's always my biggest thing to people is like, great, I'll pat you on the back for getting to where you want, because on the surface, it looks really sexy. It looks really cool. And really what you're doing is you're giving somebody the tip of the iceberg is really what you're doing. It's just a snapshot. But if you haven't developed those things under the surface where the iceberg is massive, right? It's huge. And you don't have those things to be able to sustain just that tip that you're seeing, man, dude, it's really hard to keep any results that you get. And that's why you continue to go through this ugly, vicious, annoying, frustrating cycle of trying the next best thing that your friend did or that your family member did. And you're looking at the short term and what the short, quick results that they were able to yield. Chances are you extend that out 6 months, 12 months, and they're either back to where they started or even worse, right? And you're right there along with them. Damn, what's the next thing? Well, that was fun. We got to where we wanted to go, but it must have not worked because, yeah, we lost the weight, but we gained it back. We're back here again. All right. And you would just keep going over and over and doing that over again until you draw a line in the sand and you go, man, maybe there's something up to this. Maybe there's actually skills and habits that I have to develop in order to keep the thing that I actually just earned instead of just getting it quick and going, shit, I don't have a plan for here. There's no exit strategy.
Yeah, man. And I love what you're saying. I am huge on the whole asking yourself the question with anything. Can I do this for life? Or can I stick with this for the next 10, 20 years? Whatever it may be. I mean, that's such a huge question because if you think about a lot of the stuff that people are doing, you know, eating such low amount of calories or some absolute crazy shit, it's, if you ask yourself that question and you've been doing it for even like a week, right? You probably have a pretty good idea if you can stick with it, right? It's like, oh no, I've been so hungry. I've been miserable. I've been irritable. I've been a dickhead to all my friends and family and whatever it may be, right? And then on a different side of a coin, like let's talk about the whole side of what you're actually doing to yourself during this, right? I don't think a lot of people think about not even being able to sustain these habits or the thing that they're doing for the next 10, 20, 30 years, but let alone what happens to your body when you're in a deep calorie deficit, when you're not eating enough, right? We lose this muscle. We lose muscle. We've talked about it on the podcast many times. Like, muscle is just the most beneficial, or like, it's like gold for the body, right? It creates more energy. It allows us to eat more calories at rest. It allows us to live longer. Like, the benefits go on and on and on and on. Like, we could sit here and talk about them for a long period of time, but that's one thing that most people don't think about, is they see the scale going down and they think that it's body fat, right? And what you'll see is that when you lose weight, right, it's never just body fat, right? Like, somebody tell you they lost fucking 20 pounds of body fat in a month, you tell them to fuck off. Like,
honestly, shit.
Exactly. It's like, yeah, come on. No, you lost a lot of muscle, right? You lost a lot of muscle, you lost some water, and you lost some
a lot of water. Yeah.
Right. Like that's the way it is. That's why, like, people do keto, right? And nothing against keto. I think it has its benefits. It's amazing for certain people. If you have diabetes, if you have tons of inflammation, that kind of stuff, it can be very beneficial. It's not a long-term diet though. Some people, they do it for life. It's a terrible thing to be doing 24/7, 365 all day, every day. Like, it's not something like that. It's a short-term thing, lower that inflammation, get yourself into a better place with blood sugar, insulin, stuff like that. It can be beneficial there. And there's other benefits too. But, what people don't understand is, like, with that kind of thing, like, people lose like 10 pounds the first week. You're never going to lose 10 pounds in a week, right? That's a lot. That's a lot of water, right? Carbs hold water. Like, carbs, I think it's like 1 gram of carbs is like 4 grams of water that it holds on to, right? That's kind of what you see. So you get rid of the carbs, clearly you're going to get rid of a lot of the water in your body. And that's something I really, really want people to understand out there, is that when you're losing weight, the reason why Matt and I preach a sustainable way, which to me is, these smaller calorie deficits, right? Going into a calorie deficit of like, 300 to 600 calories, right? Going, what this would look like is maybe your maintenance calories is 200, going down to somewhere in the, 14 to 1700 calorie range. And you can always go lower. That's the thing. If you start out super deep, like, you can't really go lower at a certain point, but the sustainability of losing weight, a half a pound to a pound and a half a week is really what allows you to be able to keep the results you get and to just build on it, right? Like, to do that, like, over time, you're losing more body fat, you're losing less muscle. And alongside that, if you do, just to kind of give you some other tips around this, if you are working out during the course of this, you're doing resistance training, you're eating plenty of protein, close to maybe a gram per pound of your body weight. So if you weigh 200 pounds, eating somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 grams of protein a day, these are going to be things that preserve that muscle that you have on your body during the calorie deficit. And so not only do we want to keep you in a lower calorie deficit, 300 to 600, I like to start at 300 for a few weeks for my clients, just to give them the ability to kind of build into it, right? I know for me, no matter where I'm at, it sucks eating less food, right? I could be eating more food than I've ever ate before. I could be eating 4,500 calories, which kind of fucking sucks. But like, if that was my maintenance, right? If 4,500 was my maintenance, even going down to 4,000 would seem terrible, right? Like, if I've been doing that for a while, you'll see it's never easy. And so I like to ease people in. People have different views on this, and it works either way. But I've just found for my clients, giving them a few weeks to kind of adjust to eating less, and then going into a 500 calorie deficit. And from there, keeping them there as long as they need to be, maybe going a little lower at times if they need to, right? Or going a little bit lower towards the end of that calorie deficit to kind of like, do a little last second, like few week sprint. Like, that's the kind of stuff we're talking about here. But if you're not eating enough protein, you're not resistance training, you're not doing those kind of things, then you're also going to be going against that muscle. And we lose that muscle, we lose those maintenance calories. We want to keep those fucking things up. It's a lot more fun having more muscle, being able to eat more. It helps with events. It helps with Thanksgiving. It helps with Christmas. It helps with New Year's. It helps when you go and have some drinks. It helps when, you go a little crazy and you have a binge or whatever it may be. It's going to set you up for a lot more success.
Yeah, dude. And I always say too, it's like the faster you want to get there and the faster you want to lose the weight, the more you're going to struggle. The second you have the ability to ditch this time frame for yourself, right? Like think about it. You didn't get to the position you're at now, 20, 30, 40, 50 plus pounds overweight. It didn't happen overnight, didn't happen in a couple weeks, didn't happen in a couple months. But for whatever reason in our head, we think like we could just shed all of this weight, in such a short amount of time. And so we do things that are not sustainable by default, just simply by having that mindset. So I think one of the easiest things to do straight up front is ditch your time frame, ditch your end goal. Like, because newsflash, when you get to your goal, whatever that is, you have to do the things that got you there to be able to sustain and keep it. Otherwise, what's the point? You just keep going back in that vicious cycle that we were talking about. So if you have the ability just to punt your finish line, like kick that thing out of there, the slower you lose the weight, generally speaking, the better. It's inevitable that you're going to lose lean body mass when you put yourself in a caloric deficit. It is a high stress to our body. Our body's literally tapping into survival mode. We're sending a signal for our body to try to be as efficient as possible with the energy and the low amount of fuel that we're giving it. But it's also required to be able to create fat loss as well. So you're dancing with it. It's this delicate dance. And I will say, to Alex's point, 0.5 to 1.5 pounds per week losing off your body is phenomenal. Like I like if I'm going through my personal process and I'm down a half a pound, I'm pumped, because I know in that half a pound, the majority of that is going to be fat. I might have lost a little bit of lean body mass in there, because again, it's inevitable during the process and when you're stressing your body. But I know that the percentage of fat that I lost on that, since I'm doing it very gradual, is going to be really good. I'm going to sustain as much muscle as possible, which is why it's really important before you think about just diving straight into a fat loss phase and just slashing and cutting your calories. I highly, highly, highly recommend, and this isn't just like a one size fits all, but everybody can benefit from this, is doing what Alex said. Build your calories up to find a maintenance, find an established, legitimate maintenance. Meaning, like, if you don't know what you're currently consuming right now, start by tracking your next 7 days and don't change anything. Start there, right? And then add those calories up, divide by 7. That's your average right there. Now that may mean that you're under eating, right? And this is where a coach would come in and help you with the whole numbers and things. Let's say hypothetically you're under eating. So you tally up your calories. Let's say you're 6'2", 200 pound male, or 210 pound male, 6'2". I'm just using my numbers. And I was consuming, let's say 2,000 calories, right? Well, something called my BMR, my basal metabolic rate, right? It's just a fancy name, is the amount of calories that I need to consume to keep the lights on. If I were to just lay in bed all day, not get up, right? Just literally stay functioning, blinking, breathing, my organs functioning properly, like just to stay alive, I'm around 2,000 calories. Let's say after I took my 7-day average, I was eating 2,000 calories. Right? Which means my body has slowed down and adjusted to this low amount of fuel that I'm basically just surviving off of. My body's trying to figure out a way, how can it be most efficient off this very tiny, tiny, tiny amount of fuel and just survive, right? That's not a healthy position to be in, just to be in survival mode. So to Alex's point, you need to find a maintenance that's true for you based on the additional activity, because I'm just assuming that everybody's not just laying in bed all day, based on the activity that you're doing throughout your day. So that might mean that 2,000 calories plus another 200, plus another 250, gradually increasing, right? Maybe you can go even smaller, 100 to 50 calories, but I'm increasing it to figure out a true maintenance for myself based on and matching it up with my activity level. Let's say I walk 10,000 steps a day. I weight train 4 to 5 times a week. Like, that's going to be a different energy requirement than laying in bed consuming 2,000 calories, right? So instead of 2,000 calories, I'm probably closer to legitimately 2,800 to 3,000. And that's just ballparking, but just to give you guys an idea. And that's how important it is, so that now my body is running off an adequate amount of fuel, some high, good quality octane that I can burn energy from. And then when I have hung out there for a while and it's time for me to go back into a caloric deficit to burn some body fat, I've spent enough time focusing on building enough muscle so that when I do go in to cut my calories, I'm in a really strong position to do it. And I can keep the muscle mass that I've been working so hard to build, finding my maintenance or even in a slight surplus, that it makes the process so much easier. Most people skip that entire thing. They just go, I have no idea what I'm currently consuming. I'm going to do this thing that looks cool, that requires me to eat as much food as like a tiny baby bird or maybe like an infant child. And hey, it's working, right? It must be working because my body, I'm losing weight, not knowing actually how much damage they're doing to themselves, because all they're focused on is this scale number that they're associating with, that when it goes down, thumbs up, great, I passed. If it stays the same or goes up, that means I failed and this thing's not working. And that, unfortunately, that's where everybody's head's at, which sucks because it's so much deeper than that. And by the way, like, there are scenarios where, like, say, for example, you're in maintenance and that scale is moving up or down, or even on a daily basis is the easier way to put it. On a day-to-day basis, when you weigh yourself in the morning, you're going to weigh different than you do midday than when you do at night. It's just how it works, right? It's how it happens, which goes to show you that scale and body weight fluctuations are going to change constantly. Does that mean that since your weight went up 3 pounds from what it did in the morning, that you just gained 3 pounds of fat? No, right? Like, there's a lot of water in there. There's a lot of inflammation going on if you trained. There's gut content, meaning the food and water that you actually consumed. So that should paint a better picture for you guys' head to be like, okay, there's a lot more that goes into this scale weight versus just me passing and failing myself, this binary mindset, very black and white. Like, the scale went down, cool, I'm winning. Scale stayed the same, damn, I'm not doing enough, I got to do more. Or the scale went up. Because I'll tell you right now, the scale can go up and you can be healthier, and the scale can go down and you can be less healthy. And so the quicker you get detached from that scale number and what it says and dictating what your success is based on what that number says, the better off you're going to be.
Oh, dude. I mean, there's so much gold in there right there. I mean, first off, like, the fact that building calories up, right? It's so huge. That's why the first phase in both of our programs is that, right? Building people up. A lot of the people we see are under eating, right? Or they just need to hang out at maintenance a little bit more. And God, the reverse dieting process of building your calories up to maintenance is the best time to get in the gym, right? It's the best time. Yeah. Well, it's the best time in general, but it's the best time to get in the gym too. We talked about muscle. Do you want to increase that? You can easily increase that number by getting in the gym as your body's eating more, putting that extra fuel to good use, and building some fucking muscle with it is a great way to do it. And I also loved, what you were talking about with the whole weight fluctuation, right? I think, it's always going to do that. And I think that's why it is, for people that are weighing themselves, it can be really beneficial to do it every day at the same time in the morning.
For sure.
Right? Before you eat anything, before you drink anything, after you go to the bathroom if you can, but really just in the end, just before you eat anything, right? Just do it before you eat anything, and be consistent with it. And that's gonna see the averages over time, because the averages are gonna be the key. You don't want to focus on one number, and that's where if you do it the same, if you do it on Tuesdays, right, you're relying on the one day out of the week. That could be a day where it just happens to be up because you were stressed, or because you didn't sleep as good, or because you had a bigger dinner the night before, because you had a hard workout. There's a million different ways the scale could be up, or reasons the scale could be up. And understanding that, it's also, we can be logical with that too, and understand, oh, I'm up 3 pounds. Well, did I eat another fucking 10,500 calories extra over my maintenance calories? No, I ate the same amount I did. Well, guess what? This is probably water. It's probably an increase in water weight, right? All that stuff happens. And I've had this conversation tons and tons of times with people as well, going back to the weight as well, where the 1/2 pound to 1.5 pounds is, people are like, this isn't working. Right? This isn't working. And I'm like,
that's a big one.
Yeah. You lost 1 pound a week for the last 8 weeks. Like, what's not working about this? Well, guess what's not working is that they're comparing themselves to Susan at work, who lost 30 pounds last month on keto.
Oh,
right?
shit.
They're comparing themselves to so-and-so on the commercial that lost 100 pounds in 3 months. Right? You got all of this shit out there, and the industry is just flooded with all of these stories of these huge weight losses, right? And some of these people may end up keeping it off, right? More power to them. I hope they do, right? I hope that these people do, but
I hope they do too. Real quick, we're not hating on these other things here. We're like I hope people do. Absolutely, 100%.
No, we're not against any, like, I get it. I've done the shit, right? Like I'm sure you've done some shit out there that's quick fix and all that.
For
stuff.
sure.
A lot, right? And I'm like, that's why we do this, right? That's why we coach, is to help people find a sustainable way, because you can only do this so many times before you're like, fuck, like, what am I supposed to do? I keep gaining the weight back. And the thing is like the industry just puts this out there that it's this quick thing and that you can lose all this weight in a short period of time. And that, like, it's kind of the difference. And I've had people tell me that this is wrong, and they may be right too, right? But I think that you can have quick or you can have it for life, right? Like it's kind of, I believe that there's two ways, and obviously we can speed it up. Like certain people are going to be able to handle larger amounts, but understand too that what people forget is they focus so heavily on the scale, they forget about the muscle aspect of it. And I'm huge on that. Like whatever we can do to preserve that muscle, it helps so much. Like I have, my maintenance calories is 4,100 calories, right? You might think about that and be like, holy fuck. But guess how much fucking wiggle room that gives me, right? Dude. If I have a fucking crazy day, it's not that bad in the grand scheme of things, right? It's not really that bad. I bounce back a lot quicker. And that's because I have so much muscle on my body over the course of 12 years of consistently training, right? Consistently training, consistently eating tons of protein, consistently eating enough for the most part. I went through some years where I was doing the whole restrict binge thing, but I've been consistent with all those things. And that's what happens is you give yourself a lot of wiggle room on the events, on the holiday season, on whatever's going on throughout the week, whatever fuck up that you think happened, right? Like whatever, oh, you binged, right? When you're eating, when your maintenance is 1,500 because you've just fucking dieted, that binge is going to be a lot worse than if you've been building your calories up and you've been building tons of muscle over the course of the last decade. And you have, the ability to, I ate 8,000 calories. Well, that's not too bad, right? That's double my maintenance, whatever. That sucks. I probably feel like shit, but guess what? Over the course of a week, I'm probably going to be fine, right? Because I'm probably not going to eat as much tomorrow. Like it's going to even out over the course of the week. And so I think that that's a huge thing for people to understand. And another thing that you talked about was not focusing on the scale. And I think that it's huge for people to have different forms of measurement out there. This is something, a lot of this stuff we talk about a lot. And I think that people just need to hear it over and over again sometimes. I know me, a lot of this stuff I need to hear, right? A lot of the stuff we talk about in different podcasts, I need to hear. And we talk about it not from a place of being really good with all this stuff all the time, but from a place of knowing, what works for people, knowing what works for clients, and sometimes just wanting to hear it ourselves, right? And wanting to remember it ourselves. And so I like to put out as many forms of measurement as I possibly can, right? Body measurements, progress pictures, like in the mirror, front, back, side, just energy, like changes in energy, sleep, hunger, mood, all that stuff is really, really good forms of measurement. I honestly hate the scale personally. I think the scale,
I do too,
sucks. You can see, and really that's not what people want, right? Like you don't want to lose the weight, right? Like if you stayed the same weight and your body changed in a huge way and you looked a lot better, that's what you want. Right. The scale is just like people think, when I'm down 20, I'm going to look this way, right? I'm going to look a certain way when I'm down 20. So really one of the best forms is progress pictures, right? Like looking at yourself right away and then looking at throughout, you could do them every few weeks. You could do them every month, whatever works for you. Set a reminder, do it first thing in the morning. Just put your fucking phone on your soap or whatever, like you just in front of that and just do a 3-second timer and take it. And then take a side photo, a 3-second timer, and then take a back photo, a 3-second timer, and just do it in the same place with the same things on if you can over the course of the months and the years or whatever you're doing. And you'll see when you put those photos side by side, changes that you won't see in the mirror looking at yourself every day. And that's one thing is you might not think you're changing, but if you don't have these other forms of measurement out there, you're not going to know. And so when you do start, if you are thinking about starting, even if you have already been started, if you aren't doing progress pictures, if you don't have body measurements, get a soft measuring tape. It doesn't take that long. Do it around your waist or your hips, like your legs, your arms, whatever you want to measure. If you just want to do your waist, just do your waist, whatever you want to do, right? But get it out there, because if you don't have it out there, then you're never going to know, and you're just going to be relying on the scale. And as we just talked about, that doesn't mean you're losing body fat if the scale is going down. And if the scale isn't going down, that doesn't mean you're not seeing results. You just maybe don't have the forms of measurement out there to actually see them.
So important, man. I actually make my clients that come on with me, it's required to take your initial progress pictures. And we either do biweekly or we do monthly. But those initial pictures, as awkward, as uncomfortable, as stressful as they may be to upload them into my app, I will tell you that people that didn't do it or chose not to do it in the past, like years ago, before I was making it a requirement, it was more like an optional thing, because I was like, oh, I don't want to make them feel bad. I was shooting myself in the foot as a coach, and they were too as a client, by not taking those pictures. And now that's just one less data point that we have. That's an amazing data point, by the way, because I do have clients that went through full on body recomps, couple on the top of my head that I can think of that I currently have right now, where their body weight has fluctuated within like 4 pounds total, almost like stayed exactly the same. But their pictures, their beginning pictures, is funny. One of my clients the other day just took a picture, him standing in his old set of jeans that he could pull out from himself. And is like, it was like a different person's jeans, right? Like he's lost about 8 inches on his waist, but his body weight's the same. Right. And this is also because he didn't engage in a full on, like, legitimate progressive strength program as well. So we put some awesome amounts of muscle on him, within this past 12 months, and he's completely changed his diet. And of course, we work on the outside stressors and things like that to help improve those as well. But he's so glad, and I'm so glad that he took those initial pictures, because if we just went by the scale, it would have looked like he was failing week in and week out. Right. When in actuality, he's building muscle extremely fast because he's brand new. His body's extremely adaptive to the stimulus that we're putting on it progressively, week in, week out, going through different strength cycles. He's got all the equipment in the world. He's got an awesome home gym. And so these things are great, but they can be discouraging if all we took was the scale, if we didn't do the progress photos, if I didn't ask him on a weekly basis how his clothes were fitting, if we didn't take waist measurements, if we didn't take into account how his energy levels were, all these things. Like if we didn't take any of those and we only had, let's just say hypothetically, we went off one data point and that was the scale, we would have looked like we were failing for the last 52 weeks together, right? And I would have been banging my head, on the desk as a coach trying to figure this out. He would have been frustrated as a client. And so I've done those things in the past where we did just have the scale as a data point, and that's my fault as a coach. And being able to go, okay, we're making these adjustments. I'm requiring progress photos because I've seen the people, not only me as a coach and being able to make adjustments, but I've seen people regret not taking those first initial progress photos, as uncomfortable as they are. But I will tell you, I even tell people, like, take them, show me proof that you have them. You don't have to upload them to the app if you're embarrassed. I get it, but you need to have them for yourself on your phone, save them, email them to yourself, because I promise you, you will want to look back at those. I guarantee you will. And you'll be proud of yourself when you do. You'll be frustrated that you didn't take them. And the only pictures that you have to compare are like pictures that you took years ago where you were kind of the same shape and size, but like you were in regular clothes, and like it's hard to tell, you know what I mean? Like you're going to regret not having taken those, as uncomfortable as it is. So I actually make it a requirement now for my clients. It's like, it's part of their intake form. They can't submit their intake form unless they put those on there and checked off that they've completed that portion of it. So
I love it, man. And I've had that happen way too many times where, people aren't seeing the results with the scale and they're frustrated. And, they were unwilling to take their progress pictures at the start, or they were uncomfortable with it, or they did it like with their shirt on or something like that, or whatever it may be. Right. And that is, I'm kind of sitting there as a coach, like, hey, like, it would be nice to have these other forms of measurement, because are we doing the right thing? Right? Do we need to change? Like if the progress pictures aren't changing, and if the body measurements aren't changing and the scale's not changing, we need to change some shit up. We need to do something different, right?
Yeah.
Like we need to do something different. But if I only know the scale, we know that that's not the best form of measurement. Like I would honestly rather not have the scale and just see the progress pictures over time and just see the body measurements and just see how you're feeling different. If your energy's changing, if your sleep's changing, if all those different biofeedback markers are changing, like that's more important to me as a coach and to me personally as like with my own body and my own physical changes that happen throughout the year. That's all I'm really worried about personally. And so I think that that's all huge. And I'd say one of the last things to go into is around just how to do this, right? I know we've talked about a lot of different things, right? We've talked about to this point the fact of asking yourself, can I do this for life? Can I do this for the next 10, 20 years? If you can't, don't even do it. Like it's not worth it. Take it from two guys who have first off talked with tons and tons of people who have gone through this. Also, two guys who have done a little bit of this ourselves. We've gone through the ringer ourselves. In this, it doesn't work. If you can't do it for life, if you can't do it for a long period of time, it's not going to work, right? It's not going to be effective. Also, like small calorie deficits, right? Don't go into these 1,000 calorie deficits that all these bullshit programs out there have you doing. Go into a smaller calorie deficit. Start 300, 600, 300 to 700 calorie deficit. You can always go lower if you need to, but if you start small, you might be surprised. It might actually be in a bigger calorie deficit than you think. That's the thing. That's another reason why I like to start a little bit smaller. Sometimes people were already eating in a little calorie deficit. They didn't know. They weren't seeing really a lot of results, but then you start going a little bit deeper. It's like, oh, maybe we are in a 500 calorie deficit. We didn't even know, right? You could be surprised there. Keeping protein high, close to a gram, like on either side, let's say 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. If you're somebody who's 200, let's say that's 170 to 200 grams a day of protein, right? If you're somebody who's way overweight, using goal body weight. Like if you're somebody who's 300 pounds and you want to be 200, use 200 as a gauge. Don't try to eat 300 grams of protein. That's going to be fucking miserable. You're probably going to have digestive issues, right? Working out, doing resistance training, whatever we can do. Think of this as a way, like think of it as I want to do this for life. Is this something I can do for life? And also, what are the things that I can do to preserve the muscle on my body during this process? Smaller calorie deficits, eating more protein, doing resistance training in some capacity, whether that's body weight, whether that's resistance bands, whether that's dumbbells, whether that's using, barbells, a full gym, whatever it may be, whatever you have, it's going to help, right? All these different things, using all the forms of measurement out there, right? Body measurements, progress pictures, changes in energy, sleep, stress, mood, all of those different things. Those are the type of things that we're talking about. But I want to kind of ask you, Matt, what are some things that people can do to start doing this? Because we all know, and we've talked about, we don't want people to try to do all of those things I just listed all at once. But how can they start?
Yeah, you gave them the gold standard. So I would recommend going back to that. If you guys are serious about this, he just gave you everything right there. You in that last from, at minute 35 to right now. So the last 3 minutes, if you guys actually wanted the gold standard cheat sheet, everything Alex said will put you in a phenomenal position to have success long-term and keep your results too. So I think if you're like, you just want the Cliff Notes version, the short condensed one, things that you can start doing right now. Let's keep it even simpler too. Let's say like if you didn't want to track, which I, by the way, have everybody track, but let's just say you had some resistance to that and you weren't willing to work through that yet. You're like, oh, I don't want to track my food. And okay, cool. And you still want to get started, but you're like, I'll graduate to that. Okay. This is what I would recommend is consuming, single ingredient whole foods as best as you possibly can for the majority of your diet. I would start there because here's the thing. You're probably overeating. I hear this a lot too. People are like, oh, I don't feel like I'm eating that much. And they're obviously, like you can see them, they're very obese, right? They're very overweight. So something's going on here. And they might be eating what they think is a low amount of calories, or they might be not eating a huge quantity of food. And the reason for that is because they're probably eating the majority of what they're consuming is processed. So it's hyper palatable, highly sugar, right? High carbohydrate, high fat. So the size of the food, meaning the quantity, the volume doesn't have to necessarily be high. It can be very small, but it can be packed with a ton of calories, which in turn makes you want more when you consume this processed stuff. Trust me, these food companies are so smart. They are extremely smart. We are continuously paying them and putting money into their pockets because they have designed foods that trigger our brain to like want more of these things, which by the way, are not healthy for us, but we just want to eat more and more and more of them. So we're not going to win that battle of, thinking that we have outsmarted these food companies. They know exactly what they're doing. They're very good at what they do. So keep that in mind. And I would say the more you can transition your mind to feeling better, if you can go, okay, if you can correlate the food that you consume and you choose to put in your mouth, and you can associate that with literally the quality of your fuel, your gas that you're going to run and you're going to operate on different levels. If you consume shitty, high ethanol fuel that's very low quality, your car is going to probably sputter and it's going to have some problems, right? It's the same thing with your food consumption, right? You got to think about, okay, let me put the highest quality of gas and fuel that I can in me. And if you're way down here, that means maybe just going up a little bit higher and introducing some more single ingredient whole foods. Do it. And I want you to pay attention to how you feel. Your body's going to feel different. You're going to probably feel less bloated. You're going to feel less grogginess. If you're experiencing headaches right now and you're not hydrating properly, like little things like that, to get your body to feel normal again, to have energy, the energy that you're capable of, but all of a sudden it's disappeared because you've just been living off processed shit day in and day out. You might have forgot what it feels like to feel normal, to operate and be in a thriving state and have a ton of energy. You might have just been, I'm so used to not having energy and feeling bloated and fat and just miserable. And not feeling like doing anything, and your skin feels like tight and thick, and just you're consuming a bunch of carbohydrates and fat, and that's not a very optimal place to be in, right? And so reminding yourself, one of the simplest things you could do is just switch out the quality of your food, right? If you're not willing to track the amounts that you're consuming right now, maybe that's the next step for you. If you just wanted step A before and you want to graduate to the full on, like being hyper aware of the total amounts that you're consuming, that's totally fine. I would say start with what Alex said, incorporate resistance training. Ideally, depending on where you're starting out at, you can start with 2 to 3 days a week, but think about progressing that quickly to 3 to 4 once you're ready for it. And then just changing out the quality of your food. If you do those two things right away, that's like what you could start with right now, today. That will set you up for success. And then obviously there's a bunch of different levels there that you can progress it up to. But if you're looking for somewhere just to start, if you're like, again, you're that person that has resistance to tracking, you think it's too much of a hassle, which is a whole different conversation, right? Like I would argue that, it's worse to not know the amounts that you're consuming than the little inconvenience that you think it's taking you to be hyper aware and track exactly what you're consuming, right? But that's a whole different conversation. Let's just say you're against that and you're like, I just want to start from scratch. What's the easiest thing I could do? Try to make 80% of what you consume single ingredient whole foods. If right now it's like 20-80, then you can progress it up to, okay, let's go 30-70, right? 40-60, like just take these steps in the right direction. And what you're going to do is give yourself some low hanging fruit, meaning be hyper aware of how your body feels when you introduce some of these single ingredient whole foods. You're going to notice a lot of the cravings go away. You're going to notice some of the bloating and the low energy levels are going to start to dissipate, and you're going to start to feel better and better. And it becomes this addicting roller coaster ride that you can go on, that you're going to really enjoy it because you know the outcome based on the decisions that you made to introduce some higher quality fuel. Do that in combination with some resistance training a couple days a week. Man, like your body's going to start to change right away. And this has nothing to do with tracking. This has nothing to do with all the things that we talked about with that Alex gave you the gold standard. That's where I would eventually want everybody to progress to. But man, if you just need to start with there. Introduce higher quality fuel, the food that you're consuming, introduce some resistance training, at least 2 to 3 days a week to start, progress that to 3 to 4 minimum. And an easy way to figure that out is ask yourself, how many days am I willing to commit to resistance training, strength training per week for the rest of my life? if the answer's not 6 or 7, then you got to think about going lower to that. Because I know everybody, when they're first starting or they're hearing this, they're like, oh, I can go 5 or 6. I can go every single day. It's like, well, let's see what we can do, because you're going to get thrown some curveballs that are going to make it challenging. So let's see remember, this goes back to sustainability. We're not trying to do this quick. We're trying to do this for the rest of your life. So ask yourself that, extend your time horizon, gradually introduce some higher quality foods. And that's where I would have people start, man. What about you?
Yeah, man, I love where you went there. Honestly, I think that's all good. That's a great place. I would say, I was actually thinking the same way in a different viewpoint of it. So like the energy, especially for somebody who's unwilling to track at this moment, think about what habits can I do to build my energy up? Because if you're increasing your energy, you're going to be getting closer to homeostasis. You're going to be feeling better. And that's really where we want to be. We want to get you back to homeostasis, maintenance, where your body feels the best. The easiest way to do that is by building up your calories and in really working on habits like what you said, like increasing your food quality, like doing the whole foods, or you said that, but doing the resistance training, building that up. Walking is another one. Hydration is a huge one, generally a very easy one for people to do, and also something that a lot of people are way under doing that. And what you want to be at is at least half your body weight in ounces. So if you're a 200-pound person, at least 100 ounces of water a day, right? And so those kind of things. Stress management is another great habit. And then the last one is, I think there's one more. Sleep. Right?
Yeah.
A huge one, right? That's the biggest one of them.
Sleep.
Other than maybe water, right? I think water is the easiest one. But I would just say from those things, we're not going to go deep. You can probably look at some previous episodes on those, but kind of taking what Matt said, taking some of those other habits that I said, what are 2 to 3 of those habits that you can start out with that are going to help increase that energy? Because that's what we want to do. We want to do that. Track your energy levels alongside this. Like as you see your energy go up, you see, okay, I'm getting a little bit closer to homeostasis. I'm getting a little bit closer to where I want to be, where my body wants to be. And, as once you get up there and you're like, oh yeah, I've been here. I got a lot of energy for a little while. That's generally a good sign that your body's ready for a calorie deficit. But then again, right, if we're not tracking calories, first off, it's an amazing way to be able to navigate other things, right? I think that one reason why it's a lot easier for me to navigate meals out, events, stuff like that, is because I understand what the food, how many calories probably is in it, right? Like I can get a decent idea just by looking at something, a plate of food. All right, this is probably around this, give or take 200-300 calories on either side, whatever it may be. You don't have to be perfect, but knowing how much 4 ounces of chicken and what that looks like, knowing what, 100 grams of rice looks like, or what, whatever these different quantities of food that you eat on a regular basis look like, is going to be really easy and beneficial going forward. So don't track with the intention of doing it forever, unless if that vibes with you. Track with the intention of being able to eventually eat intuitively. Like, I think it's the best way to do it. And so that's what I would say. Whatever, kind of building off what you said, just do whatever you can to increase your energy levels, get your body back to homeostasis. And so, dude, this episode's been sick. I've really, really enjoyed this. I hope everybody out there's enjoyed it as well. And Matt, why don't you wrap us up, huh?
Yeah, man. And one last thing too, the reason why Alex keeps referring to energy, because you guys got to think, our calories are our form and fuel source of energy. That's what gives us our energy. So when he says energy, that's exactly what he's talking about. The quality of food that we're consuming. Is your fuel and your energy source being run off crap, just processed stuff? Or can you gradually introduce some new stuff and choose to feel better based on your choices, based on your decisions that you're making, increasing the quality of your energy and your fuel? Like, you're going to operate and you're going to live life differently. And once you feel that, you're going to make decisions more so on the side that are beneficial for you, more times than not. As soon as you start to get the glimpse, that's one of my favorite things, is once you guys that are listening to this and you actually implement this and try it, it'll become a snowball effect. You're like, oh, I see how I feel when I eat sweet potatoes, or when I introduce some fruit, or when I introduce some high quality meat sources. Like you just function at a different level. And so that's what he's talking about in terms of energy. Like, you will feel differently. And once you get that and you understand that and you actually experience it, it's going to be off to the races. So that's all, man. And obviously, if you guys got some value from this, benefit from it, and you're even willing to try some of those things, we'd love for you guys to reach out to us and let us know if you experienced it, if you implemented it into your week this week. We love to hear from you guys. It's always good hearing feedback and that you guys are actually enjoying and jamming on the pod and vibing with us. Don't forget to share it with somebody if this was valuable to you that you think could benefit from it. Send them over to the podcast. And if you guys want to stay up to date to every episode that we're releasing, remember to subscribe on Spotify, YouTube, all that good stuff, Apple as well. Alex, anything else, man?
I think you said it great. We appreciate you, everybody out there watching and listening to this pod on a regular basis. This is one of my highlights of my week, is coming on here chatting with you, Matt. So always appreciate everybody out there who listens, who supports us. And we hope you enjoy this. We hope you have an awesome rest of the day, rest of the week, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Peace.